You can't spend more than 90 seconds with each student, or we can take disciplinary action against you as a teacher. Which was just like, what are you talking about? What are you saying? I can't spend more than 90 seconds with each student because there were certain students that were so behind. I had a 15-year-old in the 7th grade class and he could barely read.
Right. In your estimation, what is the difference between a child who doesn't get attention and a child who does in the school system?
It depends on the child. You know, some children can succeed without getting a lot of attention. You know, some children, they just kind of, you know, have that confidence within themselves for whatever reason where they're able to, you know, just do their thing. You just put it in front of them and they just run with it. Whatever you give them, you know, they're going to do their best to master it. But those children are generally few and far between.
Right.
So, you know, on the other hand, you have, you know, the majority of children who need to get a certain level of attention to be able to thrive. So I'll give you an example. I worked in a public school. I won't name the school, but it's a public school here in Houston, a charter school. Back in like 2015, you know, I went in and taught writing class for 7th grade. And they told me you can't spend more than 90 seconds with each student or we can take disciplinary action against you as a teacher, which was just like, what are you talking about? What are you saying? I can't spend more than 90 seconds with each student because there were certain students that were so behind. I had a 15-year-old in the 7th grade class and he could barely read. You know, so I'm going over and I'm like, okay, this is how you do it. He was like, oh yeah, I understand. And I was like, wow, great. Like, you do want to learn. You know, the way they was talking about you, I thought you didn't want to learn.
Right.
You know, I go back and I'm telling my dean on the level, I'm like, oh yeah, such and such, like, he can learn. Like, he wants to learn the material. He just needs a little bit of extra help. No, because
seconds.
you have 180 students on your roster. So just mathematically, if you spend more than 90 seconds with each student, the other students are suffering because of that. And that was the way that, you know, they presented it to me. So I was like, okay, well, what help can he get? If I can't work with him, who can?
Right.
You know, so they said, okay, we have a learning specialist who's going to be coming in and working with students that, you know, needs to get caught up. You know, so don't worry about it. You know, we're going to have a meeting next week. We'll have the learning specialist there. I'm like, oh, okay, great. You know, we got something. All right, cool. We go to the meeting with the learning specialist. She says, write down the 2 students that you feel need the most help. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know exactly which 2 students need the most help. Okay, she's like, no, not per class, per grade level. She was talking about on the whole 7th grade
just 2
level of the school. It was like, yes, hundreds of children on the 7th grade level for the whole school. And she was saying, we can only take 2. She's like, I'm like, what? Like, what are you saying? She's like, no, I'm the learning specialist, not just for this school, but for the whole system. So I can only take 2 students from each grade level from each school.
Wow.
Because I have to work with all the students in the whole charter school system. And I'm like, okay, so what are we going to do about this 15-year-old? Like, what's happening with him? So then my dean is like, well, if you want to work with him, you can work with him during your lunch hour. So I'm like, all right, you know, like, are y'all testing me? See how committed I am? Or like, what's going on? You trying to make me give up on him? You know, like, I'm like, okay, you know, I'm going to come in. I'm going to come in my lunch hour. You know, I'm just going to eat some Skittles at my desk or something. I'm not going to try to go get healthy foods. I'm just going to stay right here and work with him during my lunch hour. And I'm like, man, he's 15. You know, at this point, like, me and my lunch hour can't be his only lifeline.
Right.
To be able to save him from whatever comes next if he doesn't have basic skills. They were just passing him to the next grade level, just pass him. So I'm like, all right, look, they don't care about you. Like, you're on your own, really. So if you want to be able to have a good life, then you need to have some skills. So what can you do? Is there any talent that you have? He's like, I guess I can kind of draw a little bit. I'm like, okay, so let's lean into that. So I want you to draw me a picture. I'm going to go run to the dollar store. I'm going to get you a frame. We're going to frame the pictures that you draw, and then you can sell those. And that'll be your start, you know, into learning how to make money from yourself, but in a legal way, you know. So he started drawing. He's focused. You know, he did a really great picture, actually. I went and got him a frame, framed it up. You know, he kept drawing every day. I kept framing him up. So I said, okay, now you got your first body of work. We're going to see if the other teachers can be your first customers. I go to the other teachers in the teacher's lounge. I'm like, oh, you know, such and such student, he did these. You know, we're focusing on his entrepreneurship, so he has some life skills to work with. They're like, he did that? I'm like, yeah, he did. They're like, I'm not going to buy his work. I'm not buying his art. I'm like, why? You don't like it? They're like, nah, he just doesn't pay attention in my class. I'm not supporting his art.
Wow.
I'm like, this is a child. Like, you're holding resentment against a child for not paying attention in your class? And it was like they hated him. They wouldn't even, I had to give my own money and make him think that the other teachers bought his art.
Wow.
Because they acted like they had like just like a vendetta against him, you know, or some resentment towards him because of him not being able to succeed in the classroom. And they felt like that was a personal affront against them instead of trying to figure out how to meet his needs, right? And I don't know what happened to that student. You know, like, I don't know where he is today. But what I do know is that he's in his mid-20s. So wherever he is, I hope that he was at least able to take, you know, that little piece that we were able to do together, focusing on his entrepreneurship, and translate it into something positive within his life experience. And I know that as an instructor, I was at least able to give him that to run with, right? So yeah, when we talk about attention for students, it's like, it depends on the student, but most students do need to have attention to thrive. And some students have, you know, special needs where they need a lot more attention. And if they don't get that attention, then what kind of life are they going to have?
Right. And also what you're saying too is to find a teacher that's going to take that much time and energy to put into you, that's like the stars just lining up, because the system is set up in a way to where as a teacher, you're going to get punished for trying to help an individual.
Right,
student.
like you're on a plantation.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, don't do that.
Man.
What master going to say?
Right.